is absent. Mark Dietrich. Present. John Dwyer.
Here.
Henry Hollander.
Here.
Dick Matthews.
Here.
Davis Reinhardt.
Here.
Steve Timms is absent.
May we do the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I move to approve the order of the agenda. Second.
Vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Do we have any comments in the review of the minutes? Has anybody been through that? Are we ready? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes of the May 21st, 2009 meeting.
Second.
Can we vote?
Okay, that motion passes with Commissioner Brinkman abstaining.
We now are in the state of the meeting where we have the public forum. This is a time for anyone who would like to speak to the Planning Commission on any issue not on the agenda for this evening. Was there anybody signed up to speak?
No, there's not.
Okay. I guess we're ready now for the public hearing for case number WZ0903, an application filed by RV of America for approval of a zone change from Commercial 1 and Commercial 1 with conditions to a planned commercial development and approval of an outline development plan for the property located at 11808 West 44th Avenue. Do we have a staff report?
May I address the chair? I would like to recuse myself from this case, please. I know the applicant and can, what's the wording, can get direct monetary gain from this decision.
Thank you.
This
Is there a procedural thing I need to do?
I would like to see a vote of the commission on whether they think that's appropriate or not for her
So
to
we're
recuse
voting
herself.
to accept her recusal? Okay. Thank-
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
So do I leave now until the next case?
That's correct.
Goodbye.
Now do we have a staff rep?
We do. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce you to another one of my colleagues. This is Mark Westberg, who is the Senior Projects Engineer with the Public Works Department. He has not attended a Planning Commission meeting before, so I don't think you've ever met him, but he will be here to answer any questions related to Public Works issues, streets, and so on.
And as you've done 100 times, may we have your name for the record, and do you swear to tell the truth?
I do. Meredith Record, Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. Before I get started with the presentation, I do have some correspondence to distribute to the Commission. It is a memo from the Executive Director of the Urban Renewal Authority who reviewed this case at their meeting on Tuesday evening. So if you want to just take a second and look at this piece of correspondence, then I'll get started when you're ready.
I don't know what this means.
They're finding the same thing that staff did, that it's not in conformance, but because the area has changed substantially, they'll
Yeah, he has to do the TV line.
That's what I'm trying to do. Is there any way you can do some notes so that we can read the screen? We'll be just a second. We are trying to adjust the lighting so that the screen is a little bit more visible. Is that better, folks? You're welcome. Case number WZ0903 is a request for approval of a zone change from C1 and C1 with use restrictions to planned commercial development and approval of an outline development plan on property located at 11808 West 44th Avenue. The property is 3.5 acres in size. Again, the current zoning on the property is unrestricted C1 on the northern one-third and restricted C1 on the southern two-thirds. I'd like to enter into the record the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance, the case file and packet materials, and the contents of this digital presentation. Do we have screenage?
Yeah, just
Power wasn't on.
Okay. The property is located within the city of Wheat Ridge, and all proper posting and notification requirements have been met. Therefore, the commission does have jurisdiction to hear the case tonight. The property is comprised of 3 parcels. It is about 3.5 acres in size and has frontage on 44th Avenue to the north and Tabor Street to the east. There is an existing structure in the very northeast corner of the property, which is utilized as a sales office. RV sales are displayed on the front portion, with the remainder of the site, essentially this parcel back here, utilized for RV storage. There is an existing 6-foot-high brick and wooden fence along the eastern property line. It runs along Tabor Street. There's a 6-foot-high chain link fence in place along the western property line with a 6-foot-high wooden fence on the very south boundary. There's also a chain link fence basically behind the sales area, which with a gate which secures the vehicles being stored on the rear of the property. There are essentially no other structures on the site. The rear is surfaced with road base. There are 3 existing curb cuts to the site. However, only the middle one is being utilized at this time. This is an aerial photo of the site. You can see it's outlined in red. Again, 44th Avenue on the north side with Tabor Street running along the east. To the west is an office warehouse structure with C1 and C2 zoning. To the southwest is Tabor Lake, part of the Clear Creek Open Space Park System, zoned A1. To the east is the Rocky Mountain Forest Products lumber company and their storage area. And then further, a little bit about midway through the site, then the property is abutted by single-family residential zoned A1 starting at this location and continuing south, and also along the south property line. The property was rezoned in 1993, where City Council approved a zone change on it from RC and A1 to C1 on the 3 subject parcels. The property approval for the zoning was heavily conditioned with unrestricted C1 on the northern 2 pieces, that would be this area up here, with C1 zoning on the southern 2/3 with only 1 use allowed. There were other conditions of the approval, including the requirement for an upgraded fence, which was built along Tabor, closure of curb cuts on 44th, and then again, of course, the biggest one being the use restriction on the rear parcel. There were 2 subsequent land development applications, one by the then owner, which was Brewer Tire Company, who did the original rezoning. That was a request for, I believe it was a change in conditions on the rear with an SUP component to allow semi-truck servicing. And then a subsequent request in the late 90s from the existing owner to, again, try to repeal the use restrictions on the rear piece to allow more open commercial zoning. Both of those cases were withdrawn before the subsequent to the Planning Commission approval. So let's look at some slides for the property. The first one, I was standing on the north side of 44th Avenue looking southeast towards the Rocky Mountain Forest Products property. Now I'm moving west. You can see Tabor Street over on the very left-hand side of the screen, and then I'm starting across the front of the property where you can see the vehicle displays. The building is actually behind these vehicles. Looking at that center curb cut, still moving west, looking at the front of the property. Western portion of the site. This is a shot of that existing office warehouse development to the west. And this is a look at the sales office currently on the northeast corner. Okay, now I'm in the interior of the site. Here's that security gate I spoke of. And essentially, the entire rear portion is RV storage. Okay, now I'm standing on the south side of 44th at Tabor, looking north. On the left-hand side is Heine's Fruit Market. Again, a picture of that existing commercial business. This is not a very effective shot. I was trying to get a picture of where the new off-ramps were going to come into 44th Avenue. This is the existing public storage facility, which is in I believe has been purchased by CDOT, the location of which will be removed due to the on and off-ramp construction. This final shot is looking south on Tabor Street. You can see the narrow width. The left-hand side is the Rocky Mountain Forest Products property, and then on the other side is the RV America property. You can see that brick and wooden fence that was built along the eastern side of the property. There was a neighborhood meeting held on March 18th, 2009. There were 7 or so folks in attendance. A lot of discussion about the proposed increase in uses on the rear piece. A lot of discussion on what happens with Tabor Street with the increase in the allowed uses, and also a lot of discussion about the proposed improvements that CDOT is going to start construction on in October of 2009. Agency referrals. Our Arvada Fire Protection District is requiring additional looped water lines and hydrants with eventual development of the site. They may also need a secondary access from Tabor, kind of depending on what happens on that south side of the property. CDOT does not really have jurisdiction over this property. However, they would like to see all of the unnecessary accesses to 44th closed due to the on and off ramp soon to be built to make sure that there are safe traffic movements. And of course, that would be something we would look at when we get a specific development proposal. Valley Water is requiring additional looped water mains, fire hydrants, and fire sprinkler lines, also additional taps for any new structures. They will also need a 30-foot easement that is dedicated by a plat document upon final development. XL Energy can serve the property, and the Wheat Ridge Police Department expressed no concerns with either traffic or crime. Continued. Wheat Ridge Economic Development supports approval of the zone change to open up uses on the rear. They believe that the strategic location with the proposed I-70 improvements will render this property as a tax-producing piece of commercial land, and that they feel it's appropriate to allow the market to dictate the development pattern of the property, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Wheat Ridge Public Works is requesting a 20-foot right-of-way reservation along the entire frontage of Tabor Street. And we will assess the potential access points to 44th Avenue and Tabor upon submittal of a traffic analysis with a specific development proposal in the future. They have also requested that a series of notes be placed on the ODP document relative to the 20-foot reservation to make sure that no permanent structures are installed there. And finally, the Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal Authority, you just got a copy of their comments from Tuesday night. They have concluded that what is being proposed is currently not consistent with what is shown on their plan. However, they do feel like the ramp relocation will impact the area, possibly making additional commercial uses make sense on the rear piece of this. Okay, let's take a look at the ODP document. This is actually the document that accompanies a zone change request, and in this case, it is going to be used to establish allowed uses and development standards for the land. Now, when a developer approaches us to rezone a property to planned development, we've got a couple different options on how we deal with that. In 2007, we modified our ODP process to expedite that review with an FDP being approved administratively if someone has a very specific idea of how they think the property will develop. And in that case, the plan that you would be seeing before you would have way more information than this one does. It would have a specific site layout. It would have information as far as a massing perspective related to the neighborhood. It also would contain a fair amount of architectural detail. That is not what is being proposed tonight. Tonight we're looking at what we call a non-specific plan development application, a non-specific ODP, where the only thing we're doing tonight is establishing permitted land uses and development standards. The advantage to this approach is that it allows a person to get land use entitlements without spending a great deal of upfront investment on traffic studies and drainage reports and building design. As such, the plan that you're looking at tonight has just a minimal amount of information on it. Keep in mind, if this is approved, if and when they have a specific development proposal, they'll be back in front of you with a specific plan as well as with City Council. So that's just a little bit of background on what we're looking at tonight. So let's get into the details of the plan. One of the items that we look at are the permitted uses, and there is a list of allowed uses included on this. They were primarily taken from the C1 zoning district, but a lot of the undesirable types of uses that might be more impactive were thrown out. And some of those deleted uses includes auto sales, auto service and repair, electrical supply service, equipment rental agencies, locksmith shops, indoor flea markets, motorcycle sales, and so on. There are certain uses which were identified to what we call have soft drive-throughs, including banks, coffee shops, laundry and dry cleaning shops, and pharmacies. There are additional provisions on that if we would get a development proposal from someone who wanted an additional drive-through on one of those uses to go through a special use process where we can look at that exact development proposal and judge it from the SUP criteria, which sometimes are even harder than the zoning criteria. Staff is recommending that any of the allowed drive-through uses be limited to development area A only, which is the northern half, to try to keep those types of uses away from the neighborhood. In regard to a couple of the uses, I'd like to make some comments. Use number 26, which is garden supply stores, I would suggest that it be modified to allow outside display and storage. We also recommend that item 29, which are grocery and convenience stores, be allowed to have gasoline pumps. One of the uses that staff does not support on the list is item number 55, which is self-storage. They have specified that it would be on the southern portion only. However, staff does not support that use for a couple reasons. Number one, we think it would be an underutilization of the land. And also, although we can collect some sales tax on the revenues produced, it's very minimal. So it's not a huge sales tax generator. Now, there's no specific boundary separating development areas A or B, and staff believes that the market will actually dictate what is appropriate based on the specific design of the site. And in our conversations with staff, really what we see happening is probably some sort of retail establishment, maybe fast food on the front, possibly office use on the back. Realistically, you're not going to see a retail development back here or a fast food based on the depth of the property, and we believe that will be almost a self-policing situation. And we have included that as one of our recommendations of approval, including to limitation on drive-through uses on that rear piece. Lot coverage, landscape coverage on the property is 20%, which is the minimum required by the city. They will also have to meet any other typical commercial landscape standards, such as the installation of street trees and so on and so forth. Maximum building hardscape coverage would be combined to not exceed 80%. They've also included on the document an FAR at 0.5 to 1 with a build-out maximum of about 77,000 square feet. That sounds like really a lot, but a lot of times, again, that's self-limiting based on the uses. For example, a restaurant use has about triple the required parking than a retail use does, for example. Building height specified as being 50 feet on the northern portion, which is Development Area A, 35 feet on Development Area B. I would note that 35 feet is the maximum we allow in all of our residential and agricultural zone districts, so that would be consistent. Setbacks would be 20 feet from the southern, western, eastern boundaries, and the setback from 44th would have a build-to line as prescribed by the Architectural and Site Design Manual of from 0 to 20 feet to try to get that neo-traditional design with the building pushed up to the street. Architecture, when proposed, will have to meet the requirements of the Architectural and Site Design Manual, and fencing, parking, lighting, and signage. I'll refer back to the pertinent code sections for those standards, which is pretty typical on a document like this. There are currently 3 access points on the property. Really, only one is being used. What they are showing on this document are 2 access points to 44th, and then 2 on Tabor. Get my cursor to work. Here we go, the southern one. And quite honestly, at this point, we don't know if those are appropriate or not. When it comes time to them submitting a specific development proposal, we will be requiring a traffic analysis, which will take a look at the proposed use and see what access points are appropriate in that situation based on the design and the use. And we've tried to include language I take that back. I've included a condition putting any future owner on notice that we would be reevaluating those access points at the time of a specific development proposal. One of the recommendations of staff is for a 20-foot right-of-way reservation along Tabor Street. They are showing a 20-foot reservation about halfway down. Staff is recommending that that be extended the entire length of the property to the southern boundary line. And again, we have included that in our recommended conditions of approval. Because this is a zone change request, staff is required to take a look at the zone change criteria that are included in Section 26-112D2 of the zoning code. And so if you bear with me, I'd like to go through those, and I'll try to be brief. The first criteria we look at is whether there's an existing error on the zoning map. Staff would conclude that there is not. The property is Zone C1. The second criteria is whether there's been a change in character in the area due to the installation of public facilities, zone changes, new growth trends, deterioration, or development transitions. As you, as planning commissioners, are well aware, we are anticipating that the western portion of the city, especially on the other side, the western side of I-70, will become a major commercial node due to the construction of the Cabela stores and with the Coors annexations as well. And we're anticipating up to about 800,000 square feet of commercial development on the other side of I-70. And to facilitate construction of those improvements, there have already been infrastructure improvements that have been made. Those include the widening and improvement of Youngfield, construction of the 40th Avenue underpass under I-70, some trail relocation of Clear Creek, and also improvements to the Highway 58 and I-70 movements by CDOT. This picture that we're looking at now is the impending construction that will happen to relocate the existing I-70 on and off ramps to the east. So let me help orient you a little bit. Obviously, this is I-70 as it crosses. We've got Ward Road over here and then 44th Avenue at the bottom. This is showing the existing ramp configuration with the off ramps and on ramps. The proposal, well, it's more than a proposal. The reality is that these ramps are getting moved about 1,000 feet to the east to this new location. The subject property is right here. This is Tabor Street. So the new on-off ramp configuration will be almost directly across from the western property line of this land. And as such, we feel like it dramatically changes the commercial development potential of the property, and that allowing additional uses on the rear would allow a currently underutilized commercial property to be developed into something that's perhaps sales tax generating. A little closer view of that. This is actually the design of the ramps. Again, this would be 44th Avenue at this location, Tabor Street over here, subject property, on and off ramps. It's quite a substantial effort, which includes the installation of curb, gutter, and sidewalk, medians to control traffic movements, widening with axle decel lanes, and so on and so forth. 44th right now is currently designated as a collector street and carries about 13,000 cars a day. Tabor Street to the north of 44th Avenue is a minor collector and has got about 3,000 vehicle trips per day. Tabor Street is one of the only streets that we've got, or it probably is the only street between Ward and Kipling that goes across I-70, and eventually it is going to connect to the Gold Line station, which is located further north. And as such, we think it's very likely that in the future there will be warrants that might mean a traffic signal could be installed at the 44th Avenue and Tabor intersection. If the warrants are met because of something proposed on the property, it is very likely that that developer will end up participating in the cost of that signal construction. Again, two access points are shown to both 44th and Tabor, and again, with the ramp construction and with whatever is proposed here, we would be reviewing that specific development with the traffic analysis, analyzing how that would connect with all the improvements in the area and function the best as it could. Staff does conclude that this criterion has been met. Okay, the next criteria is whether there's a change of zone is in conformance or will bring the property into conformance with the comprehensive plan. This is a piece that is taken out of the Fruitdale sub-area plan, which is an addendum to the comprehensive plan approved in 2007. The property is shown as being adjacent to a major commercial node, so let me orient you. 44th Avenue at this location, this is Tabor. We're showing a major commercial node at this location and at this location. Subject property is right here. Now, the northern portion of the property, which is the salmon-colored piece, is shown as being commercial. Southern portion shown as single-family residential. The property is also located within the 44th Avenue Ward Road urban renewal area, and again, that plan, which was adopted in 2001, shows the front portion of the property as being desirable for community commercial and the rear piece as being residential. Urban Renewal did take a look at this proposal on Tuesday night, and they did conclude that what is being proposed is inconsistent with the designation. However, they also acknowledge that with the on and off-ramp construction, there will be changed conditions in the area, which again will impact the viability of this property for commercial use. Staff concludes that both of those documents did not acknowledge the existing commercial zoning on the property since 1993. And while the proposal, especially the rear piece of it down here, is inconsistent with that low-density residential designation, we do conclude that there are changed conditions which support approval of the planned development zoning with the expanded uses. In addition, the proposal also meets several other goals of the comprehensive plan, as well as the neighborhood revitalization plan and the broader mission of the city to have an open-door policy for business. Let's talk just a little bit about the comprehensive plan. It is an advisory document that staff and the elected officials and the appointed officials are to be used for general advice in making policy decisions. There are also several sections of Chapter 26, which is the Zoning and Development Code, which address zone changes. In Chapter 26, Section 112, which is the zone change piece, the purpose statement provides, and I'm paraphrasing, that if a proposed amendment is not consistent with the comprehensive plan, then the request may only be approved if it can be demonstrated that the request is justified because of changed or changing conditions in the area or in the city in general. Again, staff clearly feels that there are changing conditions in the vicinity that merit this change, and we have concluded that this criterion has been met. The next pieces aren't quite so long, so... The next criteria is whether the proposed change of zone is compatible with the surrounding area and there will be minimal inverse impacts. This is a copy of the zoning map for the vicinity. The property is outlined in red. All of this pinkish red color designates commercial 1 zoning. So the property to the west is zone commercial 1. This purpley color is even C2, which is an industrial type of zoning. And it's currently an office warehouse, and I believe still does some tire changing on semis. To the east is C1 zoning with the Rocky Mountain Forest Company's outside storage yard and sales office. To the north is Heine's Market, which is zone C1 and is a grocery fruit stand facility. The adjacent properties to Heine's include an A1 piece bought by CDOT, includes a PCD piece bought by CDOT. Both of these properties are going to be utilized for the infrastructure improvements. To the southwest, we've got A1 zoning. That's what all this green designates. So we've got Tabor Lake to the southwest. To the very south of the subject site, we do have A1 with single-family residence. I believe there are 2 homes right here. And also A1 zoning on kind of the southeast portion of the site with single-family homes. The property has been zoned and used commercially since 1993. Staff is supporting this zone change request. However, we do acknowledge that if and when a development proposal comes in for the property, that care must be taken to look at the impacts on those adjacent, we just lost. Did everybody lose their screen? Okay, there it is. Okay. Anyway, we acknowledge that there's going to be the requirement for upgraded buffering, some protection for these adjacent residences, which will be evaluated at the time of a specific development proposal. And again, we are concluding that this criterion has been met. Next criteria is that there will be social, recreational, physical, and/or economic benefits. Staff concludes that there will be economic benefits derived from the zone change, especially on the rear portion, which is currently underutilized. It will allow the property to develop into a sales tax generating use, and this is especially likely, we think this will be a dynamite piece of commercial property when those on and off ramps are located right across the street from them, the construction of which will begin in October. Again, we support this request. Is there adequate infrastructure? We already went through the agency referrals. All of those agencies will have their input when we do get another development proposal, something more specific than just uses. And we will go through a whole entire referral process when we get that, when we get a specific development proposal. And of course, the developer would be responsible for installing any sort of improvements to accommodate that proposal. Finally, whether the change of zone would adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare. The proposed ODP takes into consideration that there's adjacent low-density residential use on the east and south. There's been a height limitation that's been built into the plan to protect folks from the height allowance on the north side. Traffic impacts, drainage, and compatibility for buffering with those adjacent residences, again, will be reviewed at the time of a specific ODP submittal. Relative to the architectural and site design manual, since there's nothing being proposed to be constructed at this point, we can't do an evaluation, but again, any future development proposal would be subject to the requirements in that submittal with that addendum to the zoning code. Okay. Staff conclusions. We've concluded that there's changing conditions in the area due to ramp relocation, which support the zone change and the extension of other uses on the south side, while the proposal is inconsistent with the residential designation on the comprehensive plan and the urban renewal plan. The existing commercial conditions have been in place since 1993, and they were not reflected in either of those plans. We've concluded that there will be economic benefits derived with zone change, that all agencies can serve the property with upgrades installed at the developer's expense, and that traffic impacts, drainage, and compatibility will be assessed at specific ODP stage, which again is going to be a public hearing process in front of Planning Commission and City Council. So with that, we are given a recommendation of approval. We have included seven conditions. They are reflected in your staff recommended motion. The first one is that drive-through uses be limited to development area A, which is the front piece. Use 26, which is the garden centers, be modified to allow outside display and storage. Use 55, which is the self-storage use, be totally eliminated. Use 29, which is the convenience store use, be modified to allow gas pumps. That the 20-foot right-of-way reservation for Tabor be extended to the southern boundary of the property. Notes be added regarding the access points. And finally, the Public Works notes relative to the right-of-way reservation be added. I believe there were 3 or 4 of those included as Exhibit 10 in your staff report. So that concludes staff comments, and I would be happy to answer questions at this time.
Anyone? I do. Okay.
Thanks for the presentation, Meredith. I have one question. Are we immediately putting the business that's there out of business with the change in the zoning, since an allowable use is not an RV sales?
There is a provision in the zoning code, in the plan development regulations that, and I don't know it verbatim, but that an existing use can be continued until an FDP is approved and a building permit issued, so that use would be allowed to continue.
Okay, thanks.
I have a couple questions. Regarding the 20-foot setbacks, there's going to be reserved for future right-of-way 20 feet
Correct.
along Tabor, and it requires a 20-foot setback. That would be from the future right-of-way line, is that correct?
From the inside edge of the future right-of-way line.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the way this is written, that wouldn't be...
They should be okay. Mm-hmm.
The detention facility shown in the southeast corner, is it of any consequence when they do a more detailed drainage study if it moves to another location or increases in size?
There should not
The
be.
reason I'm asking the question is there is a condition about, I mean, it's very similar to the access situation where it may change
Correct.
based on more detailed study. Is that of any consequence as far as this plan's concerned?
It's not. The property, I believe, naturally flows that way, and there is a de facto pond kind of in that corner or along that southern
Is there
property line, but no, we would do a total evaluation upon,
do we know if there's adequate outlet and that type of stuff? And it's too early to
it would be too early to tell.
But if it moves, that's not a problem.
It's not a problem.
You want to allow gas pumps. Is that adding a potential environmental problem without really considering what we're doing, or has somebody looked at that to see that? I mean, what's driving that?
That was one of my recommendations. It just seems like that is going to be a prime location for folks trying to exit or enter the freeway system, and it's a very good location for a potential gas sales store.
And okay, that's all I have at this time.
May I follow up on that question? I guess I'd like, you sort of gave me your reasoning, but I'd like to see it developed vis-a-vis the drive-throughs that you're not allowing. Mm-hmm. So you're worried about traffic concerns, I assume, in not allowing drive-throughs, but in fact, isn't a gas station just a more intensive use drive-through than most?
It is, although usually when you fill your car with gas, you don't idle at the pump like you do with a fast food restaurant or a coffee sales facility. So I think that could be argued. Obviously, I don't think it's appropriate for the southern side. It would, if it were to occur, it would be on that north end, away from the residential areas.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? I have a Okay, I have a couple, and I guess for Mark, the 20 feet that's proposed for the reservation, does that allow for the build-out section on Tabor on the north side to be squared up, full match, and fit so that all the laneage work for the collector that's there?
Yeah, when we looked at that, we looked at the right-of-way on the north side because there's only 20 feet on the south side.
It's offset right now.
And so that 20 feet that's on the west side of the existing right-of-way would have those west right-of-way lines line up. And then if the property on the east side ever redeveloped, we'd probably ask for 10 feet on that side. We'd have a full 50-foot there that would then match exactly with what's on the north side of the 44th.
Okay. And what's the logic for why you would or wouldn't terminate it at the full length of the property? Why do we think it's necessary, or what do we, they're only proposing, I gather, to widen halfway down, and I'd like to hear your thinking on why that is or isn't a good idea.
Well, at this point, we're trying to keep things as flexible as possible for the future developer, and so we don't know where that southerly access point's going to end up being. By getting the reservation all the way down the street, or all the way down the property, then it allows that flexibility that wherever that southerly access may or may not be, we can go ahead and get right away from that point north, leave the reservation the rest of the way down.
The sort of background assumption there is that you would think actual improvements would be likely to terminate at the southernmost entrance to the property.
I don't know that it will. I think it depends on a lot of factors. They've shown it sort of ending at the end of the commercial property next across the street, across Tabor, which is a logical stopping point. But anytime we see a development like this come in that's starting fresh, that's a complete redevelopment, we always, in their substandard right-of-way next door, we always try to get what is appropriate. What we feel is appropriate in this case is 20 feet for the entire length. And that, the reservation on the south side would just stay there until it's needed or not needed. And if it's never needed, we won't ever improve that part of the street. This street doesn't, by any stretch of the imagination, meet our local street standards. And there's a lot of reasons why that is, and there's right and wrong on both sides of that. But our point is whenever we've got the chance to get the right-of-way, we should go ahead and at least get a reservation for future right-of-way.
But this particular street, if I'm reading the road grid, services a relatively small area and it terminates.
Yeah, there are just a few houses that are down there. I don't remember the exact count. Probably certainly less than 20. I think more than 10. I'm guessing. Somewhere probably closer to 10 than any other number I could throw out there. If anybody was doing this today, we'd put a 50-foot wide right-of-way, put a full 2-lane road in there for fire access and garbage trucks, and there'd be a cul-de-sac at the end, so all of those things could turn around. We've inherited this condition. We're just trying to improve it where we can, and where it's appropriate. I mean, we don't want to force anything down anybody's throats, but where it's appropriate, we'd like to get that right-of-way reserved, so if there is a future street project in there, we don't have to purchase right-of-way.
Frankly, you get another bite at this apple with any development plan that comes in, do you not? All right. So we're splitting hairs to be deciding this question now?
We do, but we think it's smart to call out that reservation, especially if the property were to sell, and then that future buyer would be on notice that, hey, you come in with something you're going to have to dedicate.
And part of our reasoning for the right-of-way, too, is that with 44th now being right in, right out only, we don't think that's going to be adequate access for this property. They're going to need at least one drive. They've shown 2 onto Tabor Street. And from that point up, Tabor Street's going to have to be improved to a full street section. We just can't. We can't have a commercial property with a 20-foot drive.
No, I don't disagree.
So that's sort of where we're coming from. We think this is a fairly good compromise for not just asking for right-of-way all the way down.
So what does a reservation mean as a matter of, what is the practical, it doesn't...
The practical side is that it's reserved for future right-of-way. We're doing this in several other locations around the city right now. The attempt is to make sure that we don't get improvements in that area. We don't need the right-of-way today, but we may need it in the future. And, the property owner gets to maintain it. They could put landscaping in there. They could do certain things. They could put a fence there. But we don't want a building there. We don't want something that's going to be expensive for us to take out in the future.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? Again, in reading this, it says the building setbacks are 20 feet from the eastern property boundary. Now, it's my understanding when this is developed, the eastern property boundary will be the new right-of-way dedication line down as far as it goes, but
Right.
then on the southern portion, it'll be where it is now. And the way this is written, theoretically, they could put a building that would be right up against the, what may be the future
Right.
right-of-way line. Is that the intent,
No.
to allow that?
It is, and I think that's a really good call. What I would suggest is modifying that statement a little bit to say it's from that setback is from the western edge of the reservation, and then we should be okay. It's a good catch, Henry.
I don't have anybody else want to say? Would the applicant like to speak? State your name and spell it for the record, please.
Am I going to be tied to this, or, there we go. My name is Mike Pharaoh, Pharo. I am a land planning consultant. With me tonight is Mr. RV America, Harry Sock. He's here to answer any questions you might have, as will I.
Would you both then swear to tell the truth? That's fine, just tell me you're going to tell the truth.
I can't speak for him, but I sure do.
Thank you.
With a thorough presentation like Meredith always gives, the good news is there's a limited amount for me to get into, but I wanted to just cover a few things, many of which we've touched on, but we certainly have our opinions here about a few things. When I started in this business a long time ago, I learned that there were the three situations that you had to accommodate when you planned a land. You had to take care of the city, you had to take care of the landowner, and you had to take care of the property. In this case, the city, Wheat Ridge, has their goals and objectives primarily having to do with wanting to expand their commercial base, and that is a strong impetus for this situation because changing conditions are playing right into that. But another situation having to do with the city's requirements on a deal like this is also taking care of the surrounding land uses, and in this case, we've got single-family residences contiguous to us, contiguous to some commercial uses. So from the design standpoint, we have to recognize that, and we believe we have. The landowner's objectives are simply to broaden the exposure of this property in the marketplace. The existing zoning is terribly restrictive. He's doing the only thing that's allowed on it, and we think that given the changing conditions, his objectives is to broaden the ability for the market to do some other things. And the third one I mentioned, of course, was the property. No matter what the objectives are, if the property can't accommodate what these objectives are, then we're sunk. In this case, we believe the property can be made to accommodate these things, and we've done some things on this planning document to do just that. We fully realize that we have to plan the land and that ultimately somebody has to design the land uses on the land. And since we are only in the position to plan it, we don't have this final end user. We can't provide those design things. But as Meredith said, we've done as much as we can. And we have talked about modifying the land use intensity lower as to the southern portions of the property. We've talked about limiting or being careful with the siting of the structures and where the parking goes, especially to the south. We've talked about augmenting the perimeter screening, and in combination with good architecture, good setbacks, those type of things, we think that we're meeting the objectives from the planning and design standpoint for those very low-intensity uses to the south. Conversely, we are upping the land use intensity, and we are recognizing the commercial exposure that we have to the front or to the north of this property. We've talked about the drive-throughs and the higher building heights and those types of things. So to the extent that we have planned and provided for the ultimate design of this thing. There are numerous conditions that go with this project, and wouldn't you know, there's one that we just can't live with. You folks have talked about it, and I want to talk about it because I have some very strong feelings about it. The modifications to the allowable uses, we are in agreement with that. The only reason we threw in the storage is because mini storage, if you will, at the southern end of this property would be a very good neighbor for the single-family houses. Very low intensity, very little traffic, very low buildings, so it would almost be invisible in terms of a neighbor to a residential zone. But we realize that the city needs the tax revenue, and so, you know, that's a negotiable thing. But for now, we hung it in there. The big thing that we've got the problem with is this 20-foot reservation, and I realize that you've talked about it, but I want to give you my take on it, because I've had a little bit of experience not only in my career but also in the city of Wheat Ridge, where I've been requested to do this on at least 2 other properties. There's a couple of things why we object to this. The first reason that we object to it is because we believe that it's a taking of my client's land with no good reason to do so. I will show you some site design alternatives. We don't need that access to run the full length of that property. We can access our property just fine from 44th and from Tabor Street to the north, as we've shown. And so we don't need that. We certainly don't need our land reserved till the end of time, because a reservation is the same thing as a taking. You, in essence, will be taking my client's land because you've already told him that he can't build on it. So a reservation does nothing for us. If the city wants to purchase this land, that land's for sale at whatever the appraiser says it is, but you're sterilizing land for us if you implement this policy. And again, I understand that the staff is required to implement it because that's what is on the books, but in this case, the policy, the concept, just doesn't fit this particular application. The other thing is that we don't want to be the catalyst for telling these people out here that you folks are planning to put a bigger road through the middle of their front yard. I don't think that's going to happen for the very limited amount of development potential that's to the south here, and so I don't see why my client needs to have his land sterilized for the possibility of a road that is likely to never get built. One of the most recent things that I've seen that your city did when you did your interviews, a great number of your citizens commented about the unique neighborhoods that you have in the city of Wheat Ridge. And certainly you have one to the south on Tabor Street. So I would have to question the validity of a concept that would choose to change the uniqueness of that neighborhood by putting through the same level of street that you would find in any other city in the metro area. This is a situation that needs hands-on attention. In my opinion, this is where your engineers ought to be turned loose to come up with a specific urban design that transitions from commercial to residential and keeps that in place. I would like to show you some alternatives here. I don't know where this is comfortable for your viewing pleasure, but pretty fancy of me to bring some miniatures of this. What I've done here is I've tried to show how various intensities of land uses could be put on this property. The sketch on the left shows a hotel. This is a template taken directly from my office files of a hotel I was involved in Rifle. It's a template for a Comfort Inn. And it shows a single commercial use, obviously centered more to the north of the property than the south. We use parking as a transition to the lower intensity uses to the bottom, but that land use could most definitely go on this property. The center sketch is something that is also very realistic. That's a template for a McDonald's restaurant to the north, and then templates for some office buildings I was involved in out in the city of Centennial. But this would be a mixed-use commercial thing where we take a very good advantage of the commercial opportunities on 44th for a high-intensity commercial use, and then transition into destination office, if you will, to the south, and again, set the office buildings back from the surrounding land uses with the parking. The option on the far right, it's sort of a mixed-use office retail center, more of a destination thing. I think you see a lot of these around now in some of the newer developments. It would be perhaps a food court, if you would, small shops, small offices, that type of thing. And what I've chosen to show you here, as we have on our allowable uses, is a residential component I chose to put in some paired homes here. Obviously, we could do townhouses or apartments or whatever and have a residential component there. That starts to, again, work with the neighbors to the south, but I'm sure the city would rather see the commercial uses. So we think that we've done a very good job here of planning for the ultimate design of this thing. We only have the one sticking point, and that is the need for this right-of-way reservation. And again, I'd have to question a reservation. If the city wants to acquire it, that's fine. But the last time we did a reservation was on this Olinger property across the street under totally different circumstances. But the deal there was we'd reserve the land, and if and when the city needed that land, they would buy it. I heard tonight that that land would then be dedicated at a later time. In my opinion, a reservation, if it's put in place, would be purchased by the city if and when. But again, our sticking point is we believe that's a taking of our client's land in perpetuity for nobody's benefit, and we certainly don't want to leave the neighbors to the south with the thought that you folks are planning to put a contemporary-sized road through the middle of their front yard. So that's our position. Both Harry and I can entertain questions if you have any.
Any questions from the... Thank you. Do we have a...
Yes.
Do we have a list of additional speakers? Diane Tipke? Tip what? Tipton. Okay. Tipton.
Sorry, I guess I dropped my N. I'm sorry.
No. Would you state your name for the record and spell it, please? Since
Diane Tipton, Tipton.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth?
I do. I swear. I promise. Okay, I'm here representing my mother who lives in Washington, D.C., and this is her. I'm representing the property on the south end of this property. Do you guys see what's on that?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And so I'll kind of show you. Can I point on that? Will that be helpful for you guys?
Is the street address?
Oh, there's a cursor?
Yeah. So,
Oh.
look, Diane. See if you find it. Here's table.
Oh, I see.
So it's
Okay.
right there.
Yes.
So you can point it with the mouse. Look here. Bring it down.
Oh, it's down there. Okay. This is my property right here.
Okay.
Oh.
Oop.
The wrong button.
Yeah, you do that.
I'll be
So-
your assistant.
Anyway, on this side of the street, first of all, have any of you been down this street?
Many times.
Okay, so then you kind of know. It's a unique neighborhood. There are only 10 houses on this street. I'm quite surprised that the city hasn't been supportive in helping to raise our property values. Every time they make a change, it lowers our property values as homeowners. And this new thing will do it very much. This goes one half of the way, more than that, on the livable side of the street. Then there's a lake. There's 3 houses, then there's a lake, and it dead ends at the Greenbelt. This property is, I believe, one of the most unique neighborhoods in not just Sweet Ridge, in the whole metro area, because we have large lots. Many of them have their water rights, and I'm talking very big lots. We have riding trails, we have horse trails, where children don't even have to be on a road to get to a horse trail that connects from, I believe, Golden to Stapleton, where they have a very, very safe way to ride. Bicycles the same way. I guess now we're going to have the light rail within walking distance of our 10 houses. This, to me, this government should be promoting our neighborhood and raising the worth of our neighborhood, because I guess you see old homes, but it won't always be that way. There's going to be changes in the neighborhood, that's for certain. The comprehensive plan thinks there should be houses north of my house, and I believe that's right. There used to be in 1960s and the 70s, even into the early 80s, a small gas station on the southwest corner of 44th and Tabor, at the very northeast corner of this property. I don't know if they dug out the gas tanks that were there or if they're still there, so that might have to be dealt with. But it had no impact on the neighborhood. Then next door to it was an auto shop that had no impact on the neighborhoods down the street. And the zoning on those two strips of land, I don't believe really changed. Right. And so now our land now has water. They're big lots, very big lots, much bigger than the lots of those exclusive homes that were built off of 38th on the north side. And we have much more amenities. I believe these lots should be, we could probably sell any of these lots for over $500,000 for a home for someone to build a new home on. And to do something like this is hurting us, because there's no other place in the whole metro area where people can have private access to a fishing lake. They have private access to a riding trails. They're going to be within walking distance to the light rail. They're right there at the highway to go downtown or to go up to the mountains. Cabela's is going to be right there. There's going to be great shopping there. I don't see why we need to let someone who bought land that is for residential, that was cut out to be residential, change it and actually really hurt our property value. You put a bank or you put stuff like that, it won't be safe to live in. People will still be driving up and down the street like they do when they get frustrated, and they go very fast down the street, and it's a very narrow, narrow street. I think the city would be better off to promote it as a totally wonderful place to live. There are many, many high-end homes that are being built in neighborhoods that don't have anything to offer them. I work at Hazen Research just down the street from Ball Metal. There's homes that are almost $1 million each, just a block from my company. They're downwind from Coors. They're right next door to a fire station. They're right next door to a research laboratory that smells bad sometimes. Coors smells bad sometimes. They have no park to walk in. They have no land for animals. They have nothing. And those are $1 million homes. And I believe with the changing of the neighborhood and the more the amenities are, that homes on our street will be worth more than them. And I would really, really hope that the city and the planning committees would start looking at this neighborhood as how truly unique and special, and how people do value it, and will eventually build homes that will have a lot of property value and taxes for schools and stuff like that.
Thank you. And does anybody have a question? Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Tipton? Can I ask, there shouldn't be any clapping or outbursts from the audience. We get an opportunity to speak, and it's not consistent with the process, but I appreciate you having the opportunity to express your feelings here. I had one fundamental thought. I follow most of what you're seeing, but I have one place where I would differ with you, and that is, I don't see any of the things that would happen there as detracting more from your property values than the current RV park does. And so I'm having trouble understanding the logic that would make the perpetuation of the current conditions be better for you than newer, upgraded facilities.
Okay, are you familiar with the street?
Yes.
Okay, you're familiar with the corner of 44th and Tabor?
Yes.
Even now, where you don't see that street unless you know it's there, basically, there's lots of traffic that speeds down the road. They think they can go to the park. They think they can park there instead of go to Prospect Park or the parking over off of Youngfield. Then when they find out they can't, they speed. They go 40, they go 50 miles an hour down the street. And that's with nothing drawing attention to that street. Now they want it to be widened almost halfway down the street, stop at my property line, and there's a lake right there that is the only way to get to that lake is to walk from any of the other parking lots, except people see that street going by that lake, and they want to go, and then they find out they can't park, and they go very fast. Well, when the street is made wider, and people are coming off the highways, and they're getting lost, they're just going to be driving up and down the street, causing a lot of problems, and getting lost and driving in our yards like they do now, or they don't now since the city put a little turnaround. It's not a street that supports that kind of traffic. You can't have two cars going in one direction. So if you're going to open it up for stuff that far down the road, that's halfway into that neighborhood, and there's no place for two cars to go.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering that.
Can I ask one question, Ms. Tipton? So I live just a few blocks from you, and I live on a similarly dead-end street. Mine's wider than yours. I think Tabor's about the narrowest street in the city. But, our street deals with the same thing every day, people coming down, trying to find their way across, and so I appreciate that. The business on the end of two businesses on the end of my street are relatively busy businesses, probably a little bit more so than RV America. I'm not sure that putting something different on there is necessarily going to increase your traffic, but that's not really the point. What I'd really like to know is the dedication then of the 20 feet to widen the street on the end there. You'd prefer not to see that at all, or half of it, or none of it, or? Okay.
We would prefer, I would prefer not to have any commercial business going down past where it's zoned for already and where the comprehensive plan that was drawn up already says.
Okay. Can I ask you one more question then? So I was initially in favor of having the 20-foot go further down for the reason that I was afraid if you put a business on the end of the street there that, for instance, was a restaurant and required parking, that people could use that 20-foot wider street to park rather than parking all the way down your street. Would that not be a concern of yours then?
Well, the biggest concern for me is that the off-ramp is going to be right there, the off-ramp.
Right. That's coming no matter what.
Right. How many of us have gotten off-ramp and didn't know where we were going, turned around in the first street?
Sure.
Have you seen what they drew up here? Were you able to look at that?
Yes.
Did that mitigate the way they focused the traffic into their own facility? Did that mitigate any of your concerns at all?
No, I don't see where someone, it takes away from the specialness of the area.
Okay.
Part of the reason that, and I do believe we can get sooner or later, especially since, this one house or the one land, there can have 4 more houses on that. That's 40% more growth on that street than what we have now? Just off the top of my head, 4 out of 10 is 40%.
I understand.
And very large lots. I do believe Harry has ditch rights on the residential property. I may be mistaken, but I believe you have the water rights there. But you covered it. That used to be there. the people used to be there. I don't know if they sold it, but I do think you have the water rights, but you didn't need them.
That's, okay.
I know you have water rights, the Bucks have water rights.
I think-
Most, and that's important for people that want to have a family and animals. I mean, this is agriculture there. Unlike, I believe, any other street along this greenbelt, there isn't a public access to the greenbelt except on my street where it would still need to be, people can get to it. But it's almost a personal, private entrance to a lake that no one else can get to unless they want to walk to it. Again, kids could have their horses without being in traffic. With the more traffic of the highway right there, families are going to want to live by all the amenities, plus their kids will be able to be safe to walk to Prospect Park, to walk to the other shopping places without even crossing a street. And I really do believe that the city would do very well to focus on that part of this street rather than the part on 44th, because that first part can be very well commercialized. That would do very good for the city, and you could still keep our place special. And we will, and it will generate a lot of, it has a real good, as much potential as his plan on someone who will buy it.
I just have a question for clarification. So, the option C that they presented here has office retail in the front and then duplex homes in the back, and then keeps the access up in the northern part, the wider street up in the north. Would you not be in favor of something like
This
that?
street's still going to be wider, and so that is,
Yeah, they passed it out to her.
You see how I'm proposing that your street stay exactly like it is?
well, I do think that with duplexes, it'll bring down the value of the property. We really are looking at some very special properties out there that are underrated, because I think people walk down the street and see older homes and don't see what eventually could be there, especially if the city helped see it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The next person on the list is Arlene Hobbs.
No, that's, I was speaking for her.
Oh, I see, okay. Ron Markow. Could you spell your name for the record?
It's Marco, M-A-R-K-O-W.
And do you swear to tell the truth?
I swear I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, what Diane was saying is exactly right about the area. It's been real special. I moved here in '93, and I could have moved to a lot of places. When I came down and saw this property, I fell in love with it. I lived down the end of Tabor Street, down the Greenbelt. And we probably put about $350,000 into the house, redoing it. We've got a lot of money in it, and we pay a lot of high taxes, unfortunately. But we're real proud of the property, and we don't think that it's just a unique property. Like Diane was saying, everybody on the block has at least half acre or more. And like Bob Rock used to say, this is like paradise over here. A lot of people come down there and they say, gee, I never even knew this place existed down here. So we really kind of take a resistance to this here plan of large buildings up there on the highway on 44th. And we would like to see, I guess to make it short, I'd like to say on your plan up there, I'd like to request if we could rezone it. And where the two properties, where the property comes down and makes a lower part in that drawing up there, I'd like to have you rezone that and just make it residential back across over there straight across like it was before. I think you can get just as much money for that property and your taxes and everything else than you can with anything else in there. And besides, that's got a lake view. It's a beautiful piece of property in there. This would be real desirable to someone. You have to be probably a couple acres at least, and you can still have your C1 up there in the front or in the lower part. And I would desire to not have any higher buildings than one single story on the small businesses and so forth. And I guess this probably puts it the way I want to do it, I guess. I don't know. You guys probably don't agree with it. I know everybody's looking for money nowadays, so I know. But I guess that's about all I got to say about it.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Markow? Thank you.
Okay.
George Isquith? Thank you. Could you spell your name for the record, please?
It's George Isquith. It's Isquith.
Thank you. And do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know. Meredith really run us over everything.
Do you want me to point to where you live?
Oh, no. Well, I don't know. Everyone wants to change everything. The American people just voted for change, but every time I see a picture of this place, it's full. I mean, I think RV storage is a pretty good deal there. We heard all this talk about the on and off ramps. That's even going to make it probably even a little bit nicer. Guy could just pull right off the freeway, dump right in there, get his stuff, and shoot right back on out, So I don't really know why it has to be changed, even, Or, like Ron's saying, too, if you want to change it, keep the commercial up front and put it back to a residential deal. That it works. You have a RV sales, RV storage. Around the backside of us is a campground. And you turn down our little street, it's almost like you are going into a camping area, They all work together real well. Across the street, you got a little fruit stand, store over there, Heine's. You got the truck stops and stuff on the other side with the truck repair by it. You got the hotel. Those things all work together real well. This little area right here works together really nice. I don't even really think that it needs to be changed. I mean, it was voted in to have that for RV storage only, so he'll go with RV sales like that. And this is a kind of a hot area for RV stuff, I got Casey's and Camping World and stuff like that up there. It's a big popular spot for people that come by, campers and stuff, so I don't know. I mean, I think it works right now. Why we have to change, so much? I don't know.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you. I think I got one I can actually say properly. Margie Brown. I think I got that one out okay.
I'm his wife.
Could you spell your name for the record, please?
Like the color, B-R-O-W-N.
Thank you. And do you swear to tell the truth?
Yeah, to the best of my ability.
Thank
My
you.
thing is, George and I bought the house about 15 years ago, and we are right behind the fence company and right across from RV America. I feel sorry for Harry because he wants to change it, but I feel sorry for us because if it goes into commercial, I don't want a bunch of people going right in front of my house. We are the first house, when you go into Tabor, going south, we're the first house on the east side of Tabor at 4350. And our street, it's not a street. They shouldn't say Tabor Street. It should say Tabor Lane because only one car or whatever can go in one direction. We have had people who realize all of a sudden that there is no through street going south. George has had his brand new vehicle hit. People turning around, When we came there, we don't even have street lights at night on our street, because even before we came, people voted that they didn't want street lights, so we don't have street lights. If you don't live on Tabor, if you are not going to visit somebody, we don't get people coming through. You get people on horseback, like Diane says, we get people on bikes, you know, but we don't have just people that don't belong there on our street. I mean, we know everybody that lives there. And like you see a car, it's like, what are they doing on our street? You know, I mean, it's ours. And we don't want to give that up. I'm sorry.
Does anyone have any question for Ms. Brown? Ms. Brown?
Are there street lights? I mean, are there lights on this RV storage?
Harry's got lights that illuminate his land, but I mean, you know, street lights that shine so you can see where you're going? We don't have it on Tabor.
Any more questions? Thank you very much. With that, I guess it will close the public hearing. I guess we're open for a motion or discussion. Does anyone like to start?
I think this is one of the most difficult things that Planning Commission has to deal with. Obviously, if I lived in one of the residents in the area, I wouldn't want anything on that property. However, if I own the property that we're looking at now to rezone, I want it rezoned because of the economic situation that we're in now. I mean, RVs are not really the business to be in anymore. I have a brother that owns an RV for rental, and he's having a lot of problems right now. And I mean, unfortunately, this is an area that's right near a major or an interchange or a major interstate. And with the development standards in the city of Wheat Ridge, I would think that any proposed development there would be an improvement on what's existing now. So right now I'm leaning towards approving this, but I'm not 100% convinced. I'd like to hear from others.
I am troubled by use number 34, which is hotel motel, and I find that very troubling. And I also really don't see the need for the 20-foot right-of-way dedication all the way to the southern boundary of the property.
Would you have no dedication at all, or partial dedication? I guess what's your thought on that?
I think the way it, I would just take off the following conditions, number 5, and substitute, remove use number 34, hotels, motels.
So, Dick, can I clarify, then you are in support the way they have it shown on the plan, where it only extends about halfway down? Okay, thank you.
Mark?
I find that there's probably a compatible way to develop this property that we can't really address in this outline development plan. I mean, this is a unique group of properties, and I see this contrasting line between these two uses, and I can't imagine that you couldn't come up with a better land use than RV storage next to this seemingly really nice place to live. But so I'm leaning towards in favor of approving it, but it would be nice to know that the development plan, the final development plan, would be sympathetic to these neighbors' concerns.
I guess I have a question for Dick, because I thought a hotel motel would be a great thing for this location, being right off the interstate. What is your concern with that?
The potential for crime, that some of the highest crime areas in Wheat Ridge are around our hotels and motels.
The thoughts of Commissioner Dietrich, I think, pretty much echo my feelings. The landowner, I think, has a right to sell his piece of property and to make it as marketable as he can. At the same time, I think, we have some obligation to the residents who live nearby not to destroy their property values and the character of their neighborhood, and we try to be sensitive to that when we get to the point of a final development plan. The move tonight addresses the landowner's concern to make his property more marketable. What we can't really adequately address tonight is the ability to not destroy the character of that neighborhood, because we don't know what the next land purchaser is going to do. We don't know who they're going to be. We can't address that concern of the neighbors tonight. That has to come with the final development plan. And so for that reason, I am in favor of going ahead and approving this. I actually have one change that I would like to make to the conditions that staff asked. I'm not convinced about a gas pump. To me, it's a more intensive drive-through use. It does have the ability to contaminate the water rights that the property owners nearby already have and use. And so I would like to strike number 4 from the conditions.
We don't actually have a...
Well, I'm not going to strike it, I just would not add it. That's right, I wouldn't add it. So if somebody makes the motion, I'm just letting you know that if somebody besides me makes the motion, I'll oppose 4 if they put it in there.
I'm trying to think, does anybody know where the closest gas station to this location would be?
It's about 4 blocks west.
Is that Vivian?
It's the Diamond Shamrock.
Great.
Yeah.
The TA Travel Center doesn't
And the
count?
TA Travel across the street, basically. So, I mean, yeah, that's actually closer.
Great big huge gas.
Yeah, the great big huge gas station. Although I have to say I never go into that one, but it's actually the closest one to my house, but I never go into that one. So there are 2 gas stations very near to where this one would be.
Well, are we, you guys, I have a couple things if you...
Go ahead, yeah.
I'm always uncomfortable when the proposal on the table doesn't match these underlying documents, comprehensive plan, Fruitdale plan. Broadly, I think that we should follow the mapping that exists. Unfortunately, in this case, we have a legacy zoning of commercial, and it amounts to a taking of an existing property right to try and enforce the comprehensive plan, and that, of course, I also have a lot of sympathy for people not losing their property rights. And I also, I'm sorry, I'm unpersuaded that a new improved development does anything but improve your circumstances, provided we adequately protect you. I do not think that a revitalization of that site hurts you. That's my conclusion, and I feel sorry you don't feel that way. I hope you come to see that. I do also don't believe that the public interest is served by exacerbating your concerns by forcing a higher quality road than's needed back in your neighborhood, and essentially making it easy for all those people to get lost in your neighborhood. So I absolutely do not support asking for more right-of-way to extend that road beyond where I think a reasonable entrance to this site would be. So So those are my thoughts broadly. With that, at that point, I guess I'd entertain a motion from the floor.
See if we can hack this one out.
I'm really glad that I'm not the one who has to give motions anymore, so I'm not sure where that got us.
I think we're leaning towards an approval, but I don't know if we need more discussion on the conditions. You know, there were some things thrown out that's a little different than the staff recommendation.
Process, you could make your best motion, and then we can beat on it for a while. That,
Make Ann read it back.
I'm sorry. The process. We'd have to. Can I reopen the public hearing? At this point, I'd like to reopen the public hearing to accept additional comments. Thank you. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Doris Meekins, Meakins.
Great, thank you. And do you swear to tell the truth? Okay, thank you.
Tell the truth. Is this your mouse? I live in this house, 40.
I'm sorry,
40. Can you see me?
Not quite.
Yours here.
Yeah, 42.
That's okay. All right,
Yeah.
so you're just...
Here.
Okay, so this is George and Margie, and you're here.
Yeah, and the back part of the property, which is what we're voting to change the zoning on tonight, crosses my north pasture and half of my home. We do have irrigation rights on there, on that land. The rights go back to the 1870s. We are the first ditch property number 1 on the Libaw ditch. And our property, our ditch water, runs about 10 feet underground, mind you, in a pipe, about 10 feet into your property. I don't know what you're going to have to do about that. We're not fighting it, but there'll have to be some water lawyers' points of view on that, because we're not going to lose that water. Also, this is another point that nobody's brought up yet. Ms. Tipton's property. A few years ago, there was a rezoning on George von Braun's property, 4305, back behind the lake, or on the lake. He was rezoned so that he got more land than he thought he had. They had to move his fence and cut down some trees and change the property lines. We think that at that time, at the time that they made that mistake, they also made a mistake across Tipton's property, because they believe, I'm sure they'll have legal, this also will involve lawyers, but they believe they have 10 feet along that whole southern border. So like always, we've got to call a lawyer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, do you know how we would, is there...
If there's any existing irrigation ditches or pipes on the property, if the ditch is underground, then those would certainly be protected, rerouted, or whatever. We're not going to do anything to impede anybody's water rights. We would require that water, I mean, it could be relocated somewhere else in the property, but it's got to be relocated in a way that doesn't impede the function of that ditch to get your water to your house.
I'm assuming
so we're very cognizant of our...
I'm assuming from this discussion there's no record easement. Yeah, but there's probably a prescriptive...
There'd be a prescriptive easement. If the ditch has been there for that long, there'd be a prescriptive easement. And as a part of the process, we'd probably get an easement dedicated for wherever that ditch ends up underground.
And the plat.
When we do the plat, when the plat is done, so...
And I think what Mrs. Meekins was referring to, she said rezoning, but I think there was a property line discrepancy down here. If you look at the bottom, see these...
There's a title issue of some kind?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what happened. City wasn't involved, but it was not a rezoning. It was a property line issue.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll close back the public hearing, and we're back to motion.
I would... It's starting to look like it's leaning towards going to be approved, and I would hope the residents don't get discouraged if that does in fact happen. I do believe, as somebody that's been on the other side of the fence a few times with the city does have, development ordinances that do promote protection of ditches and promote the type of development that I believe could actually increase your property values instead of decreasing the values. And I think that's more likely to happen if you stay involved in the process as this does proceed and we do get to the point where a more specific use is being considered. I don't know if anybody else has any more thoughts before we make a motion.
I mean, I think we're all, the problem is always how do you create a reasonable boundary between differing uses, and I think this whole dais is very sensitive to that issue, but I don't think we can, that this is the place we're at today to tackle it. It's my personal opinion. So.
I'd like to make a motion then. I move to recommend approval of case number WZ0903, a request for approval of a zone change from C1 and C1 with use restrictions to planned commercial development and for approval of an outline development plan for property located at 11808 West 44th Avenue for the following reasons. The rear portion of the property is currently underutilized. The relocation of the I-70 on and off ramps dramatically changes the commercial development potential for this property. The evaluation criteria support approval of this request with the following conditions. Under allowed uses, a note be added specifying that drive-through uses be limited to development area A. Use number 26, garden supply stores be modified to allow outside display and storage. Use number 55, self-storage be removed from the list of permitted land uses. Number 4, I'm going to not do that. I'm not going to do number 4 and 5. So my number 4 is going to be the following note be added at the time of specific ODP submittal a traffic impact analysis but will be required, which may necessitate modification to access points shown in this document. And then it'd be number 5, I guess. Notes be added in conformance to item 4 of the Public Works comments dated May 4th, 2009.
Do I have a second?
Can I amend that and add that use number 34 be removed from the list of permitted land uses?
Yeah, I'll accept that.
You'll accept that as a friendly motion?
Yes.
With that addition, I'll second.
Comments? Are we ready to vote? Vote.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you.
We're good.
Very much. But now, do we want to keep going? Does anybody? What? Does anybody need a break?
I need a break.
Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break and move forward.
We're going to take a 3-day
Return.
No, didn't you have like 10 seconds?
Oh, okay. The whole thing? I guess open the public hearing for case number ZOA 0902, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 pertaining to the residential development standards. May we have the staff report? Your name for the record?
Thank you. And for the record, my name is Jeff Hurd of the Community Development Department.
Do you swear to tell the truth?
I do. I'm not sure there's that much I could lie about here, but I do swear. So this is case number ZOA 0902 regarding residential development standards. And I'd like to note that all posting and notification requirements have been met. Therefore, there is jurisdiction here in this case. And just quickly, a little bit of background in terms of what we're doing, why we're here. This is more geared for people in the audience to give background, but residential development standards, as we all know, are relating to building setbacks, building height, building size. They are set forth in Chapter 26 of the City Code, which is the zoning code. And this is as you all know, a high priority recommendation from the Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy. The issue is, and why is it a high priority in the NRS? Throughout the document, there's recommendations that we need to amend the zoning code. There's some detail related to residential development standards in there, but really the big issue is it's expressed in the NRS. Wheat Ridge generally has smaller homes than most surrounding jurisdictions, and with that, there's obviously a need to expand, build detached garages, things like that. Our development standards really aren't conducive to doing improvements to a lot of residential property. So we're really here tonight to try to address that and provide more flexibility for property owners and implement the NRS. And as far as the current code in terms of the regulations that we're looking to amend with this ordinance, really related to setbacks, we did evaluate building heights, lot sizes, but really it came down to setbacks that were the issue. Front setbacks for really all buildings and all residential districts are 30 feet from both the front property line and the street if you're on a corner lot. Side and rear setbacks for accessory buildings typically are really 10 feet if anything is over 8 feet in height. So any detached garage is going to have a 10-foot setback, and then smaller like storage sheds under 8 feet in height are going to have 5-foot side and rear setbacks. The interesting thing is when you look at principal buildings in these districts, some of them can be 5-foot setback from side property lines. So there's inconsistencies we're trying to work on. And really, one of the other issues is we really only regulate detached garages and storage sheds in terms of accessory buildings. And when someone comes in with a gazebo or a barn or a greenhouse, it's tough for us to fit those into a box. So these are the types of things we're looking to address with this amendment. And then also lots of nonconformities in the city. We have these pretty restrictive setback requirements. We have a ton of houses that were built before the regulations were in place. They got a variance. You look at just a couple examples here of typical blocks in the city where the red represents the 30-foot setback. You see a lot of encroachments. You look at accessory buildings even in the example to the left. Tons of encroachments into the 10 and 5-foot setback. So there are a lot of nonconformities out there. And then another illustration of some of the inconsistencies with residential development standards. You've seen this before, but requiring a detached garage to be 10 foot back from side and rear property lines, up to 15 feet in height, and yet you can build your single-family house 35 feet tall, 5 feet from your property line. These are the kind of funky things we're looking to address. Staff did do some sort of anecdotal research at surrounding jurisdictions. We looked at 8 jurisdictions. A lot of things we were consistent with other jurisdictions on in terms of building height, lot sizes. These bullet points hit some of the inconsistencies that we have. We do have the highest front setbacks on average from surrounding jurisdictions in our residential zone districts. We also have lesser rear setbacks for principal buildings on average, which is interesting. And then we also have higher side and rear setbacks for accessory buildings from side and rear property lines, so detached garages, sheds. We also are more restrictive for corner lots in terms of setbacks from our peer jurisdictions. Staff's recommendations, we've been over this at study sessions, but we've honed in on the details and produced an ordinance. This is sort of the big picture, bullet points, what we're doing. I'm not going to run through each district and go through the minutia of that. You have that in your staff reports. But in general, we're looking at reducing front setbacks in most residential districts from 30 feet to 25 feet, with the exception of the R1 district, which is sort of the large lot district that we have, keeping that at 30 feet, and then reducing it from 30 feet to 20 feet in the R1C district, which encompasses generally the east, southeast parts of the city, the older, more urban neighborhoods with smaller lots. We're also looking at reduced side and rear setbacks for accessory buildings. So basically, they're treated like principal buildings in terms of the setbacks, getting more flexibility for detached garages and placement of those structures on property owners' lots. Also, one of the things we'll talk about here in a minute is better classifying accessory buildings. Like I said, we currently just say detached garage or storage shed, and we have to fit anything else into one of those boxes, which makes it difficult. So we're looking at the approach, as we talked with you all about, of just classifying them as either major or minor and regulating them like that. And then lastly, as you'll see, allowing some setback encroachments for accessory buildings, providing more flexibility where the existing structure already encroaches. So if you have a house that's already closer to the street or closer to the front lot line, the impact is already there. Let people build in line with that to a certain extent. So really the sort of complex issue within this, we're changing the setbacks. That's pretty straightforward. We talked about that. But as far as how to treat accessory buildings, it gets a little more complex. We recommended, like I said, the approach of classifying them as either major or minor. Major under the recommended approach is anything over 10 feet in height or over a certain square footage threshold, and then minor is basically anything less than that. The difference between major and minor is really the setbacks. There's greater setbacks for major accessory buildings in some districts, basically treating them, like I said, like the principal building, whereas the smaller minor accessory buildings are generally just going to have 5-foot setbacks, and there's more options for placement on the lot. And here's just sort of how it looks in the ordinance to help clarify what we're doing. Changing the front setback, that's pretty straightforward. But down here is where we're talking about where these changes take place, where we go from detached garages and sheds to major and minor. And over here is kind of the big difference. 5-foot setbacks all around, but once they get into bigger structures, for instance, they're going to be treated like the principal building. So 10-foot setback from the rear for a major, just like the principal building is a 10-foot setback. That's kind of the approach across the board that we're taking. And then certainly the size is what categorizes them. We obviously talked with you about this and reached some consensus that we're okay with allowing some flexibility for folks to build in line with existing encroachments. That is where you have a house that's closer to the setback, you can basically build in line with it along the front property line or the street property line if you're on a corner lot. The thinking behind that is, like I said, the impact is already there. So this would apply to any accessory building, a shed, a greenhouse, a barn. Garages, we gave special consideration for. We had some concern about vehicles in conflict with the right-of-way, given certain driveway depths. So if you have a 10-foot long driveway, somebody's going to try to park there. Their car is going to be on the right-of-way. If you have an 18-foot long driveway that fits a car, we tried to build in some flexibility there. I'm not sure how often this is going to be used, but it is a tool out there for property owners if they have a tight space to work with. So kind of pulling this all together, last slide is really the intent of this, like I said, is to allow more flexibility for property owners to make improvements to their residential properties, which is a major goal of the NRS. Treat principal and accessory buildings consistently, whereas the current regulations don't make so much sense in a lot of cases. And then third, to just clarify the regulations, make them easier to administer and understand for staff, elected and appointed officials, citizens. So when somebody does come in with a greenhouse, we don't have to go through the brain damage. We just say this is what the standard is. If someone has an encroachment, The impact is already there. We can work with them, things like that. So that concludes my presentation. I will open it up to questions.
I'd entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance amending Chapter 26 concerning residential development standards.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? You want to vote? Let's vote.
The motion passes unanimously.
Good job.
Is there any other items from the staff you'd like to?
Well, some new business. Jeff resigned.
No, it's
What?
Can't do that.
Even after the big, when we interviewed him, and I asked him what his commitment to the city was. Don't do that.
After we complimented him and told him what a great job he was doing, he abandons us.
Quality staff work, and
He's so good that everybody else wants him, is, I think, the thing.
Oh,
no,
goodness.
I don't like the word resign. Outside
Terminated
forces have pulled me to another city, and I regret having to leave the city here and leave Colorado. But I did make a decision that I had to relocate somewhere else, and I took a position there. So back in the private sector. So.
Well, wherever you're going is, from my standpoint, fortunate to be gaining your services. We've appreciated what you've done here.
Thank you. And it's been great to work with all of you. So.
Is the city backfilling the position?
We are.
Okay, just checking.
We are. Because you never know, but yes, we are. Actually, the ad, I believe, is going out tomorrow. So, Jeff's last day is Wednesday.
I thought he had to finish what he was doing.
I never signed anything.
I was going to say.
So, pretty open-ended.
I was going to say he has a problem with commitment, but have we adjourned yet? No.
I'd accept the motion, though.
We don't. We did have 3 folks sign up for the Planning Commission training, Henry, Ann, who was the third one, Mark. So I believe that's August 7th or 17th. Not sure if the rest of you are interested. I know it was first come, first serve, and so we tried to get those, interested in right away.
I had said that if somebody else was interested, I would back out because I had gone once before.
Okay, well.
So, but I'll definitely go, but.
Okay.
I'm going to be out of town.
Okay. Well, that's, these come along at least once a year, and we're especially excited that the new people are doing it, although they don't seem like they need much help. After tonight, you guys have done a great job. So, anyway, that's all I've got. Another question. The next meeting is July 3rd. It's July 2nd, next Thursday. The next scheduled meeting is July 3rd. Which the 4th of July is on Saturday, so Friday, of course, is a non-business day for people. Do you want to have a meeting? We have we could do the dumpster study session, but we really don't have any land use cases. So if you feel like you'd like to cancel the meeting and people are leaving town, I'd say let's go ahead and...
If we don't have any land use cases, I'd rather come in here when they're not just do the dumpsters.
Anybody else have any comments on that?
I think I'm going to be out of town, so...
Okay. A lot of people are taking the long weekend.
I'd vote not to come in just for the dumpster.
Okay, let's have a little bitty motion to cancel the meeting.
So that would put us back to the 10th, the 4th, 10th, 7th?
No, it'd be the 9/16th.
9/16, yeah.
16th of July.
16th of July.
So I need a motion.
Cancel July 2nd.
Oh, yeah.
I move to cancel the 2nd July meeting of the Planning Commission.
Second.
We can vote, unless somebody wants to argue.
That was kind of worded weirdly.
I'm sorry, that was the European date.
The second.
No, not in Europe, sorry.
Yeah. Does that mean we can now take a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Sitted?
You waited that whole time?
And that's unanimous.